Huh? No, yeah, Pictionary, win, lose, or draw. No. Do you guys know that game show, Win, Lose, or Draw? It's like from the 90s, I think. It's basically Pictionary, but there was a game show. Two teams, and they played Win, Lose, or Draw. So, win, lose, or draw.
You watch the game show a lot.
No, I lived in the 90s where I would watch that. All right, Garrett got it.
Look at paperback is.
There's always other little things going on.
It still looks like paperback is.
You know what that is?
Pinball machine.
Pinball machine, okay. Now, in order to start the game, what do I have to do to the ball? What do I have to give it?
Energy.
Energy, right? I have to give the ball kinetic energy. In order to do that, I pull back on this. What's in here?
Spring.
The spring. And I compress the spring. And while I'm holding it there, I did do work on it, right? That means it became energy. Where did that energy go? It's still in the spring, right? In other words, it's stored in the spring. When I let go, the spring goes back to shape. It's moving. That's kinetic energy. The pin hits the ball, and now the ball has the energy. So the work I did here actually became the energy of the ball, right? The spring stored it, then it let it go. So now let's say that instead I have my book. So here I am, I'm holding my book. And if you can, it's a big book, imagine there's a spring attached to it. All right? Throw my book in the air, and what does the spring do? It expands, right? Stretches.
Wait, is it attached to the
It's attached to the book and to the ground. So now I throw it up, and that spring stretches, and then the book stops, right? Where's the energy? In the spring. And then the spring pulls it down. The spring then begins to do positive work again, right? While the book's going up, the spring's doing negative work. That takes away the kinetic energy, but it's storing it in the spring. Once it stops, now the spring begins to pull the book down. That's positive work, and what happens? The kinetic energy of the book increases, right? So now we know there's no spring attached to the book, is there? But the same kind of thing happens. What's that spring called now? Gravity, right? Gravity is acting as a spring. It's an attraction between the earth and the book, right? So I throw the book up, and its kinetic energy goes from some value greater than 0 when I release it, and it decreases all the way till the kinetic energy equals 0. And while it's up there at rest, that energy is now stored, right, between the book and earth. It's just stored. Energy is not material, right? So it's not that it's somewhere we can see even, but it exists. And it'll exist forever until the earth pulls the book back down. And while the earth pulls the book back down, when it does, it's giving it positive work and the kinetic energy is coming back. So while it's up here, the energy is stored in the earth-book system, we'd say. Okay, and so as long as that book is up there, that energy is stored, waiting to be released, waiting till we let the book fall. So we give that the name, potential energy. That's basically the topic of this section, is potential energy. Let's give another adjective to describe this type of potential energy, because it's certainly different than that type. What might we call this guy? What's it stored? What's storing it? No.
Gravity.
Gravity, right? So this is called gravitational potential energy, because it's potential energy that's waiting to be released because of gravity. What would we call this? Right? You could call it spring or elastic potential energy. That we're going to look at later in the year, that kind. So this is gravitational